Okay, you were live.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining this Hyperledger meetup, and this is hosted by the Denver Hyperledger Group. And I want to thank David for all of his help and collaboration on setting these up for us. And today we got a great presentation from Eddie Satterly again, and Dzianis, and it's going to be around creating and open sourcing a Tezos connector for Hyperledger FireFly. And I know that both of these gentlemen have been active in Hyperledger FireFly and being core maintainers there. And really, it's exciting to see that Hyperledger FireFly now has an additional token that it can connect to with Tezos here. And really, it's great to hear about this wonderful work that they've been doing with Warner Music around the rewards platform. And I'm going to turn it over to Eddie here so we can kick this off and go through this great presentation. So Eddie, over to you.
Sure thing. Thanks. Yeah, it's been a good time getting where we are today, and we'll kind of walk you through it a little bit. I'll have Dennis, who's a key partner for us, who's developed this technology, walk you through a functional demo and a little bit about FireFly. So just first off, this is us. And now it's nice. It just locked up my sharing. Okay. Always happens. I cannot get out of the meeting is being recorded now. Hang on, let's see what happens here. Oh, it's got me completely tied up. Oh, the wonderful demo gods have smiled upon us again.
Yeah, I hear you, Eddie. That's always the unexpected challenges.
Okay. Well,
that's actually a good opportunity for a few more people to join us here while we're getting set up. So no problem at all.
Yeah, we planned it that way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that again.
Perfect. Showing
All
up
right.
now.
There you go.
Right.
So your obligatory antitrust policy slide that I brought over for you. So just kind of about me a little bit, and then I'll let Dennis talk about him a bit, and then we'll go from there. So Eddie Satterly, been emerging technology CTO for a really long time. Joined OneOf through an acquisition last October, and have kind of been leading the charge for a enterprise platform, of which Warner Media, as you mentioned, is our first live customer. That site's live. You guys can go play with it afterwards if you want. And then Dennis, who's part of my core team, I'll let him introduce himself a bit.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our contribution to the Hyperledger FireFly project. I'm Dennis, software engineer at Instinctools. Since recently, I've been a maintainer of the Hyperledger FireFly project, with the focus on features involving Tezos chain support. And now I'm helping OneOf company to build a great NFT platform connecting fans and collectors to their favorite musical artists, outlets, and brands. I think Eddie will talk about it a bit more.
Yeah, so just quick like the why. So OneOf has been working with the Tezos Foundation since the beginning of the platform. A few years ago has been leading the digital media side of getting the NFTs onto the Tezos platform, and it's kind of a key chain for us. All of our digital media work goes on to the Tezos chain, and then my work with Hyperledger Foundation goes back a long ways to a really cool IoT project with Intel on Sawtooth a really long time ago, when it was before there was a Hyperledger Foundation, and then a lot of work with Fabric and key components. So when we decided to build this new B2B platform, we immediately focused on Hyperledger as our ledger. So the Fabric product is used as our core ledger, where we meant the assets that are private to our clients. In the case of Warner, our public assets and their badges are then minted on the Tezos chain. With FireFly being chosen as kind of the core Web3 API capability for us to be able to interface across multi-chains because our entire design is built that way, we immediately noticed there was a gap in the Tezos capability, so there was no chain support for that from the FireFly side. So we partnered up with Instinctools and brought Dennis on board to our core team to be able to build this functionality. We started on that in the spring of this year, and happily we're able to open source it just a couple weeks back. So it has been pushed out to the community, and as Dennis mentioned, he was added as a maintainer on the FireFly project to support this work and the rest of the chain. And I continue to help them where I can on getting some community support and helping to get the word out there on why it matters. So why, like I said, why this was built from the Tezos side is because Warner Media has their media assets going out to the Tezos chain. It's a core partner of ours and a funder early on of OneOf. And the first site that's out there is wmgrewards.com. This is their public rewards platform. It creates assets both on the Fabric side for some of the private assets, and then all of the public digital media assets are all out on the Tezos chain. The connector that Dennis will walk you through is kind of how we make that all possible. We are continuing to work on multi-chain approaches. We're talking to some other chains now about how we might be able to onboard them, as well as expand some of the EVM connect capabilities, the Ethereum connector that's already in the FireFly community. And the whole point of this is the easy on-ramp to Web3, right? That's why OneOf was built, and that's why OneOf's B2B technology continues to use this. So it's abstracting away the complexity, from everything from login to being able to use a username and password or an OAuth provider or social media login. In the Warner Media case, that's Spotify. To be able to do that and create all of the necessary wallets and interconnects in the back end and make the user not need to know that it's done or why it's done, just that they have an account on here that is an easy Web2 approach to create their account. And we handle all the Web3 stuff in the system. So for Warner's specific use case, these are all custodial wallets. So we create them and hold them. And again, the user doesn't need to know, but in the future, when they want to export an asset, say on the public chain, on the Tezos side, enabling the ability to do that easily and put it into their wallet, or even take their wallet out of our platform, which is a functionality we will support in the future when we have a client that wants to do that. And in order to make all this work in the multi-chain world and again, get rid of complexity, that's why we chose FireFly. And, it is really powering the majority, 90+% of the use cases across the platform today. As I mentioned, Instinctools is our solution partner for this, and Dennis was their key resource that we brought on board to make all this possible. So with that, I will hand it over to Dennis and let him talk about the approach and the stack.
Sure. I think I will share the screen from here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. If it'll let me stop.
Yeah.
There we go.
Nice. So our Meetup agenda comprises 3 key points. FireFly overview. I know many of you are familiar with FireFly, but I want to make sure everyone has a superficial view of the project. So I'll start with a few words about FireFly. Next, we will explore the FireFly stack architecture. I'll break down how we've structured the application, discussing key components and technologies we've employed. And lastly, we'll wrap up with a demo of the FireFly stack, which interacts with smart contract deployed on the Tezos chain in action, discussing key components and technologies we've employed. So, what is FireFly? Let's take the definition from the official website. Hyperledger FireFly is the first. Hyperledger FireFly is an open source supernode, a complete stack for enterprises to build scale secure Web3 applications. In other words, it's a platform which provides you a set of APIs for digital assets, data flows, and blockchain transactions, and makes it radically faster to build production-ready apps on popular chains and protocols. So where does FireFly sit in terms of organization and the business? Well, FireFly is described as Web3 gateway. So you can install the FireFly within your organization and use it to run the private blockchain between the organization which agreed to collaborate in a consortium network and perform business transactions, or you can send and manage the transactions on the public chains, interact with DeFi, DAOs, and other chain-related stuff. Without tools like Hyperledger FireFly, integrating blockchain technology with applications can be complex and costly. It often involves writing complex technical code that doesn't directly contribute to the business value of a project, but can be expensive to create and maintain if built from scratch. So, as we can see here, FireFly provides a set of pipes and connections to different things like message buses and event manager and all that kind of stuff, which sits between those layers. That lets you to build a really robust enterprise Web3 app that can scale and is secure and it's ready for enterprise production. So it allows developers to focus on the things that bring value to the business and solve their business problems. And then they don't have to spend time thinking about how to bring all those pieces together. This is a logical architecture of the FireFly. Let's take a very brief look at it. It consists of two main parts, which are FireFly Core. This is an orchestration engine. It orchestrates transactions across the blockchains, shared storage, or private data exchange. This component is blockchain agnostic. So if your organization is going to work with different chains, blockchain connectors come into play. Blockchain connector, that's a service which handles blockchain-specific operations, such as nonce management, transaction building, event processing, and so on. Currently, FireFly supports connectors for EVM chains, Hyperledger Fabric, and recently for Tezos as well. So if your organization is going to work, for example, Polygon, Fabric, and Tezos chain at the same time, you need to set up all three connectors accordingly as part of the FireFly stack. Before we get to the demo, I want to mention one really cool feature, which we will actively use during the demo, is that FireFly lets you to build HTTP APIs from the smart contracts. So for example, we have a Web2 application and we want to call the smart contract deployed on the blockchain. For that, we just need to define a contract interface in the form of FFI. It's FireFly interface format, which is blockchain agnostic and specifies methods and events of smart contract and generate contract API based on that interface. Keep that in mind. So it's time to show a demo. First, we will set up the FireFly stack. Then we will generate a contract API based on a provided contract interface. And after that, we will call the contract and try to mint some tokens. Here is the architecture for our demo setup. Here we see FireFly Core, which I mentioned before. It's an orchestrator and provides a set of APIs for use by our client. Also, we have Tezos connector, which builds the transactions to the blockchain and processes responses. Also, we can see here such thing as a signatory. It's a service that allows us to sign the transactions that comes to the blockchain. And it supports, integrates with many key management systems, such as AWS, Azure, GCP, UBHSM, Ledger, and so on. You can see the full list on their website. And also it supports such thing as local signing when you have the public-private keys stored locally, and it's not for production use case, but it's good to test your things. So we will use that that way to set up in our stack. So let's start from running the signatory service. Let's open their website. It's signatory.io. Get started. So we can choose the option local private key. So to run setup and sign transactions locally, we need to create two files called signatory YAML that contains all the information about the service. And here we see the type of the storage. It's local secret. The file path, secret JSON, which contains the data about our keys. And here we see the Tezos account, which we're going to use to sign the transactions. And below we see the types of transactions which could be signed by this account. So it means that it can sign, the service will sign only those types of transactions, not the other ones. So the full list you also can see in their documentation. And the second file is secret JSON. As I mentioned before, it contains the keys for our account. So let's create those files. I did it in advance, so we can print the content of the files. Here we can compare and see that it's similar, but here I'm pointed the new created account. For local signing, we can just create an account by using the browser extension. For example, Temple, it's like the same extension as MetaMask, but only for Tezos. So here we can just create the account and type the account name. So I've created one for demo purpose. It's here. As we can see, the address is the same. So when we run this, when we see the status, also let's see the secret JSON file. So here is the address of the account and the private key. So don't take a screenshot, it's just test account, there is no money. And after that, we can run the service with this command. So let's do this. Let's see the Docker UI. So the service is up and running. Now it's ready to sign the Tezos transactions. After that, we need to set up the rest of the services as relates to the FireFly. So we can do this using the utility thing as FireFly CLI. So it allows us to run the whole stack in Docker. So it's really convenient thing, and we will use it to run our stack. So let's do this. For that, we need to type ff init Tezos, its name of the chain, also stack name, demo, one, it means one instance of the service, and then we need to provide the connector config file, which contains the information about our remote signing service, which we configured before. So let's see I've created the file. Let's see what's the content. So the content of the file RPC, it means the address of the node to which we are going to send transactions. Type of the network is hostnet. It's testnet of the Tezos chain. And the address of the signature service. We'll run it in Docker, so we can call it by name. And the port is 6732. And let's use this config file in our configuration. So we've initiated the stack and now we can run it. As we can see now, it pulls all the containers and started the configuration. So we can wait a minute. Usually it doesn't take much time. It's there. So it's up and ready. So as we can see here, we have the link to the UI and API. So as we can see here, there is API was generated by our FireFly core. With this API, you can do many things, such as send the transactions to the network, read them, create the networks, and message to other organizations, and a lot of stuff. So now we want to call the contract. First, we need to generate the API. So let's first see our contract deployed on the Tezos chain. I did it in advance, so it's Blockchain Explorer. We can find our contract. It's here. So we see the contract. It's similar to Ethereum ERC 721. So it also contains the such stuff for minting tokens as mint. You can pause contract, burn some tokens, destroy contract, and so on. And here we see the storage. It contains the global variables that contains state of the contract. So as we can see here, we have admin address, see the flags that it wasn't destroyed, the last token ID we didn't mint yet, nothing. So it's 0. And yeah, so to generate the API for this contract, let's open the documentation of FireFly. Here we see the section tutorials, work with custom smart contract, and here is the Tezos section. So let's start from beginning. Here I mentioned the contract deploy section, how to deploy the contract, so we can skip that part. The FireFly interface format, this section will contain the information how to build the FireFly interface format for the contracts. It's in progress yet, so it will be there soon. So in advance, I prepared one, so we can skip that part for now. The next step is broadcast the contract interface. To broadcast the contract interface, we need to use this address and send the FireFly interface of our contract that will be broadcasted to the FireFly network. So let's do this. For that, I will use Postman. We can use Slugger UI, but Postman is just more convenient for me. So I will use that one. So we see here the URL, contract interfaces, right. So namespace default, name, let's call it demo, version, and here we have the FireFly interface. So let's, for example, see the burn method. It just accepts the array of IDs, token IDs that we want to burn, or destroy doesn't accept any parameters. For mint, we have 2 parameters: owner that contains owner of the token that will be minted for the token, and array of the structures that contain token metadata and token ID. Token metadata usually contains the IPFS URL that contains all the necessary information about the token, such as token name, maybe URL to the picture and description and so on. So as we defined the contract interface, we can broadcast it. So let's do this. And in response, we got the interface ID. Let's go to the next step. When we have the broadcasted contract interface, then we can create the HTTP API for the contract using this interface. For that, we need to use this address and point here our interface ID that we generated before and the contract location to link those things together. So let's do this. Create HTTP API. Demo API interface we can take from here. And contract location, let's take from here. And so as we can see, it's success. And here we get the address of our Swagger API. So let's open it. This is the API that was generated for our smart contract. Here we have two types of requests, such as invoke and query. Invoke requests usually you should call when you want to change the state of the contract. Query to get the data from the contract without the changing the state. In this demo, we will use invoke mint method to mint some tokens. So yeah, and we have this URL to get the request. So let's do this. Mint. So as we can see here, we need to mention APIs, our interface that we have created here, demo API name, then invoke method, and then mint. And also there is a flag confirm true if we want to do this in synchronous way and wait after the transaction was confirmed in the chain. So then we need to mention here, to pass here owner of the token for that will own the token. Also, there is token ID and token metadata. Token metadata, as I mentioned before, usually it's IPFS URL. Here we can use just random data. So let's do this token ID first, second, because the last, as we can see here, last token ID 0. So let's do this in order. So we can actually mint with ID 10 and 11. We just skip some tokens, but it doesn't necessary. So, and here we have such option as key. Key, we need to mention here with which account we are going to sign the transaction. We've configured our signatory service for signing transaction by this key, so we can check it again. So there is configuration, and the address that we've configured is this one. So we see that it's the same. Okay, the request is ready, and let's mint some tokens. Hope it works. So it's success, as you can see here. Let's see the blockchain explorer. So we see the transaction here. It was minted. And let's see the response. there is the input data that we sent before. Output, it's headers, protocol ID, transaction hash. Actually, we can get from here just useful thing is transaction hash. And to see the more information about this transaction, we can use another endpoint provided by FireFly core is get operation status. So let's get this operation ID, and we can call get operation. I think we can check it from here, from the documentation. Here I mentioned it. So for that we need to call the this API operations, and here we need to pass our operation ID and fetch status true. It means that we will get all the information about the transaction, including the transaction receipt. So let's get this operation ID, get operation status, pass the transaction ID, and okay. Here we see that it was successfully input the same as we saw before, output, and here we see detail section. That's more interesting thing. And there is transaction history from the FireFly core. And here we see the section receipt. So it contains more information about the transaction, such as blockchain hash, blockchain number, contract location, and how much gas was consumed, how much storage was consumed by this transaction, and how much fee did we pay for that. And there is an important section such as storage. It contains the global variables, as I mentioned before, that keeps the state of the storage. And we see here that the last token ID state was changed to 2. So let's open the Explorer and we will make sure that it's true. So the storage 2. And we also have here such things as big maps. It's also types of the Tezos variables that contains the data, but they store it. There are 2 types of maps, usual maps and big maps. Big maps store it data in a lazy way, so it just consumes less storage, but it's a bit slower to get the data from there, and we can see what's inside. For example, here is map that contains token ID and the owner of the token, and here is the more detailed information about our tokens, such as token metadata, for example. Actually, that's all I wanted to share for today. It's been great fun being here. So this connector is in active development. We have plans for many features to implement. So you're welcome to join our project to use it, make contributions, propose suggestions, and ask questions. I'll be glad to answer all I can. Thank you.
Okay, Dennis. Well, thanks for that great presentation. A lot of wonderful information in there. And I think at this point, let's go ahead and look toward the chat for questions that have come in. And we can talk about that. And then I have a few questions as well. So one of the questions that came in earlier was, does FireFly enable cross-chain transactions? So I don't know if you or Eddie want to address that particular one.
Well, the quick answer to that is no, it doesn't do anything cross-chain, but it allows you to interact with multiple chains through the same process. So if we needed to create something on the private chain and on a public chain, we could do a multi-step transaction to do that.
Okay, perfect. Kirthi, do you have any follow-up to that, or does that answer your question on that? That's good. Okay, perfect. Anybody else have a question they want to ask via chat, or if you want to come off mute and just ask your question directly, we can do that as well. So it looks like Beata has a question. Let's see.
Technically, I don't have a question, but I'm one of the developer advocates at Tezos, and I'm really impressed with the presentation. Well done, Dennis. And yeah, if anyone, sorry, my dog is like barking. So, but if there's anyone wanted to ask any questions about our blockchain, you're more than welcome. So yeah, when we're on Discord all the time. So yeah, feel free to ask us any questions.
It's nice.
Yeah. When you're talking about Discord, are you looking at a specific channel for Tezos, or are you looking at Discord being another channel within the Hyperledger ecosystem?
Yeah, I was thinking about Tezos blockchain server, and there is like a specific section for technical people, dev talk and dev help. Feel free to chuck any questions there. But yeah, I'm quite new to the ecosystem, and I'm more than happy to join your Discord channel. So if I'm gonna convince my colleagues to jump there as well, and if you have any questions about our blockchain, we're gonna address them up there as well.
Okay, perfect.
It's definitely good to have someone from Tezos on, and I know a lot of the foundation guys support us, so we've gotten, I saw one of the questions earlier, like we got a lot of support from them as far as what, you know, they're backing and making sure that we understood where we were. Luckily we had Dennis who was able to jump in and sort most of that out for us, but yeah, when there was questions, there was always quick answers.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And you know what I think is good about the open source community is it's welcoming, you know, from a global perspective. And I know that FireFly was originally focused mainly on Ethereum, and it's good to see that Tezos has been added as an additional token that it really connects up to. So
yeah,
I guess
having the Fabric and Ethereum, you know, multi-chain side already available there for public and private play, and then us adding Tezos to it just continues to grow the capabilities. And FireFly's been a great project from the beginning. That Nico, especially over there, has been super supportive, and obviously the entire maintainer team, and then welcoming Dennis from, you know, our effort onto their maintainer group has been a big plus for them.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it looks like David's gone ahead and posted the Discord channel for Hyperledger on there. So anybody who wants to jump in, and Beata, if you want to jump in there and engage with the community as well, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and there's a FireFly channel on there where Nico answers a lot of questions, and I know Dennis is active on there as well. So
yeah, and I can test that it's very active and very responsive as far as anything in the Hyperledger Discord channels. Okay, so then the question that I'm going to ask you is, why Tezos for your implementations? And maybe you can tell us, you know, is that around the cost, the speed of the network, or what were the main things that drove the project in that direction?
yeah, I mean, so Tezos Foundation was an early supporter of OneOf, right, and going live with the assets around creators and all the digital media stuff. And there's been a, you know, lasting relationship since the very beginning of the OneOf side, because of the fact that there's a lot of creator capability, and the fact that we continue to push for making sure that, you know, we have royalties and everything tied to the creators. And even with like the release of Creator Mint recently to allow independent creators to come on the platform and create their own NFTs and monetize those, it's always been for OneOf about the creator and about the artist, and making sure that they're protected. And part of that, you know, Tezos has been very key from the digital media side, being able to make sure that that was in place and that it was respected. And so, you know, a lot of the labels and the artists, you want to go down that path, and, you know, to protect their assets as they should. So us being involved with Tezos was not really an option, right? It was something we were going to do because of the way it's heavily embedded in the system. And then making this available on FireFly is because as we roll out this new B2B platform from the OneOf side, and we onboard, you know, I came in from an acquisition of Tap Networks, which was a loyalty platform, and making that part of a B2B solution, not just the B2C OneOf portal. Tezos is a key player in both, right? So Warner has all of their digital media assets that are public on the Tezos chain, and so it was a no-brainer for us to build this and support it.
Okay, and we got another question in the chat that says, what information did you need from Tezos and FireFly to create the connector?
I maybe can hand it over to Dennis if you want to speak on what you needed, but I mean, I can speak to some generalizations if not.
What information? Actually, yeah, the Tezos chat was really helpful with Tezos communities to answer some questions. Also, like a lot of research and FireFly documentation and FireFly Discord channel was really helpful. There are a lot of great maintainers that answer all the questions almost at the same day. So it was really and it was really great to support this project with such a good community. So yeah, hope answered the question.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. The other questions, I'm seeing if there's any other ones here. Here's one from Edgar that might be a great question. Do we know why Warner decided to put their digital assets on the Tezos blockchain? And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about. Is it speed, cost, or it sounds like, you know, familiarity with the platform and already, you know, you had done some adoption there. So maybe you want to.
Well, obviously, Warner was an early supporter of OneOf, and as I mentioned, Tezos was an early investor and supporter as well. So that conversation came together originally, as I said, about the artists and protecting their assets and their ability to get royalties and to not have, you know, their art be taken without them being properly compensated for it. So it came down to that from the beginning. Cost, obviously, like OneOf has some proprietary minting capabilities that we use to minimize cost when the initial releases are done and then generate the actual asset when it's purchased. So there's a lot of things that Tezos supported for us. The Powermint technology that you know we've kind of pioneered in some other areas, but yeah, it really came down to just the interest of the community and the Tezos Foundation to make sure that artists were protected, and Warner having that as one of their primary things, being one of the 3 largest labels in the world when it comes to the media assets. And that it's about protection. It's about the chain support for us continuing to move down that path and making sure creators get the rights and the payments that they deserve off of the art that they've created. So, just the opposite of us open sourcing this because we wanted it to go to the community. People who own IP need to be protected as well, right? And their IP being protected, whether it's art or media or code, doesn't matter, right? If it's IP, it should be protected and the people should be compensated properly for it. And then for those that generate to the community, that's just an open exchange of value. And this is kind of the two coming together, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, and I took a look at the WMG rewards website that you put together, and it looks very nice. And it looks like there's also collaboration with Spotify on the account login. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how that tied in for you.
Sure. Yeah. So with Warner, right, one of the most important things is for their artists to be able to get recognized and to look at how they trend and how they chart. And so part of what we do with the badges and all that on the reward site is that people get badges for, sharing content early or saving and following artists for the work, the track, the early viewers, right? And there'll be new features coming out on this every week, essentially, for the next couple of months. This week's features were released but not published yet. They'll be published, I think, tomorrow, to be able to not only do the save and follow on the tracks and artist bit, but to be able to look at albums and there's a new games of chance on there to get opportunities to enter into sweepstakes to win tickets and experiences and all that. But that's kind of part of this, is getting it out there, getting an integration, right? That we use Keycloak as our authentication component, another big open source project that we support. And that gives us the ability to add social providers as well as use third-party OAuth or SAML providers to add a way in, as well as the username password easy button, right, that everybody knows. So part of Warner's is let's get Spotify as a social login opportunity so that we can automatically link somebody's account, and then when they save and follow, it matters, right, because they're a premium account. Or if they don't have one, allow them to create an account and get engaged with Spotify so they can look at Warner's artists and be able to, recognize the artists or the tracks or, the albums that they listen to in a way that helps the artist by pushing them up and helps the person by winning a badge to say, hey, I'm Lizzo's biggest fan, right? That's kind of how that came to be.
Yeah, that's perfect. And we were talking about badges at the beginning of the session here. And I know you've got a good section on there about redeeming badges. So you maybe want to talk a little bit about, how Warner's using those badges in the ecosystem and, going in and redeeming and getting those as part of your profile.
Yeah. So the first thing is, there's, by saving and following, you're earning a set of badges around that artist. And then you can redeem those, to like the Lizzo and a couple others you can redeem, for the Women in Hip Hop badge. And that kind of becomes a badge of honor thing. There's another level that's coming out over the next, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks away, but there's a whole another level that's coming out where you can get some of those badges, and those badges will give you unique experiences or unique entries into an experience. If you look at the sweepstakes tab on there, you can, try to get tickets. There's some VIP experiences that you're only going to be able to enter into that VIP experience if you have a particular badge for that artist or that genre. There's a couple festivals that Warner is heavily involved in over the next couple of quarters, where in order to get tickets and enter into the sweepstakes for that festival, you have to use a token that you've got for doing an action on the platform, but also you have to have a certain badge that's token gates the entry into that sweepstakes to say, you have to be, I'll use Lizzo again because everybody knows who that is, but you have to be a Lizzo. So you have to have saved the track and, have a follow on our platform, but you also have to have the Women in Hip Hop badge, and you have to have a special edition badge that will be available from a later challenge in order to be able to combine those things to be able to get an entry into an exclusive, right? You get a sweepstakes for getting tickets, but then this is a VIP experience where it's a backstage or it's a first row or one of those kind of enhanced experiences. And that's kind of where this is evolving to, right? That set of badges and showing that you're actually a fan and that you are following and listening to their music, and even, some of the stream getting of, hey, I actually went there and played the song. I didn't just click the button and say, save the track, but I actually went to Spotify's site, and through a deeper API integration, you actually played at least the first half of that track, so that we know that you really are, and not just clicking the button and trying to game the system.
Yeah, that's perfect. And do they see an evolution here where, I know a lot of the concert ticket resellers, get all the tickets sucked up, and then the individual fans don't have access to them. So do they envision this platform as being able to make tickets available to real fans versus resellers and consolidators in the ticket world?
There's certainly a lot of conversations about where this can evolve. The labels do maintain a certain number of tickets, right, as a portion of this, and making those tickets at least available through the sweepstakes and those sort of things where that it's a fan, right? That's the first step down that path. But there's our SVP of partnerships posted something about Live Nation and how to improve their rewards experience by gating some of this stuff. He posted it on LinkedIn this past week. Thomas Fiss is his name. He's on our side, and he's posted some stuff about how Live Nation could improve things, right? But there's a lot of others, the ticket players in the world that, maybe the guy who clicks the fastest shouldn't be the winner. It should be the person who actually is the fan. And, you should hold back some capability for those fans to make sure that they get that experience. Taylor Swift's an awesome example of fans paying $10,000 and $20,000 for tickets just to go see him because their daughter wants to see the show, right? Versus like if you had some guaranteed reserve tickets that are for real fans who have had a past experience of saving and following and listening to their content, that's probably a much better person to sell that ticket to than the guy who's going to resell it for, huge profit. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm looking forward to seeing that evolution take place because, doing some fan protection and fan offers will be a great give back to the community.
Yeah.
One of the things that I also see in here, which is super relevant always in the blockchain space, is a question from Edgar in the chat that says, how would this scale if 50% of Spotify users signed up tomorrow for the Warner Music Group rewards program? And really, how do you take on volume is basically what they're getting at.
Yeah. So, it's all designed to scale from the beginning, right? So the entire platform is modular and it's designed to scale from the beginning. Everything from the FireFly connectors to being able to scale out the actual blockchain, the Fabric blockchain on the back end, being able to scale the Kafka layer that's in the center that does all the communications and event messaging and brokering. So every component is designed to scale. Now, I hope 50% don't sign up in the same day because that's going to be a horrible, especially not if it's tomorrow, because that would ruin my weekend. But it is designed to scale and add components, right? Everything that we've built into this platform is designed to scale up. And with some of the FireFly features that are coming out over the next couple of releases, they'll have some high availability and scaling features built into that as well, which will help us a lot in that space rather than having to break things out to be able to, deploy a highly available FireFly instances. That's one of the core things that we're looking at. We might end up having to jump in and help them get some of that stuff move forward faster if this really does grow that fast. But we've handled 1,000, 3,000 new users a day on this platform as it's ramped up. So I'm not worried about where we are now. And we use Oracle's blockchain platform for Fabric on the back end. So, that's easy to scale. You go and click a couple buttons and add more orders and peers and, rechange the configuration to redistribute the network. Our user system already supports tens of millions of users as a capability. So again, not too concerned about that. So it's really just going to be about, if the volume happens quickly, us having to scale faster than we would like, but everything we built is all automated from the beginning. All of our infrastructure is terraformed, all of our code is all Ansible-ized, everything is GitHub Action deployed. So if we have to scale up, it's built to do that from the beginning.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great thing to hear and good answer. So one of the things I'm always interested in is making sure that we're building the community and getting more people involved. So Dennis and Eddie, what would you recommend if somebody's attending the session today or watching it on the YouTube channel for engaging in either FireFly or working with, seeing how they can connect Tezos into FireFly and use it for their blockchain deployment? What would you suggest?
Well, I'll go first and then hand it to Dennis. In general, I would say, the Discord for Hyperledger Foundation is an amazing place to start. It's linked in the chat, so you should be able to get there pretty easily, right? But there is a lot of resources there, and they're always willing to jump in and help. Even people outside that just use the community will jump in and talk about how their use case results in success versus others. But I think that Discord is a great place to start. There's a bunch of presentations on the Hyperledger Foundation's site talking about how to get involved and where things are. There's a number of different people who are super active in the community. I just did a birds of a feather thing for him in Amsterdam, popped over to Amsterdam for a couple of days at the blockchain expo over there at TechX so that we could do a quick birds of a feather thing for the Hyperledger Foundation folks. So, always, there's some of us that are always willing to do that.
Okay, great. Dennis, what's your thought?
Yeah, I totally agree with it. If someone wants to contribute to the project, the Discord chat, you can ask something about connector. Since recently it's already in Hyperledger repository, So you can open pull requests, create issues if you have if you found some bugs. You can. I'm finishing working on the Tezos connector documentation to make it easier to jump into how to use this connector and deploy the contracts and call them and so on. So I'll be really glad to help. So you can ask your questions.
Perfect. Here's one that's not really fully related to the presentation, but maybe Eddie, if you want to jump in and just respond to this one, is we got one that's asking about explaining the difference between a graduated versus an incubated. I'm sure they're referring to Hyperledger Labs type project.
Yeah, so FireFly has been incubating since its beginning, right? There's a couple of key components to that, right? One is they have to be mature enough. They have to have the test coverage. They have to have all the developers signing. There's a whole bunch of steps in there, which are well documented in the foundation. But two is it has to not just be one group of contributors from one company, right? Because then it's tied to a commercial entity and that puts the project at risk. So one of the key factors outside of just getting all this stuff done was adding someone like Dennis, who's from an outside organization, rather than it all being the folks from Kaleido who built and open sourced the original FireFly project, right? So one of the key things is having outside committers involved that are, maintaining the project outside of one commercial entity. So there's a whole bunch of hoops that they've jumped through since they started to make sure that they had all the things that were necessary to be an accepted project. But that is how you graduate to a main project rather than being an incubating project within the Hyperledger Foundation. Like I said, there's tons of docs on this if you want the details.
Perfect. And then we got another question about, are there any plans to develop any other connectors beyond what you talked about here with Tezos?
From our side, not in the short term. Most of the other public chain work we do is with EVM compatible chains, and the existing connector does that. There is discussions with some other chains that are not EVM compatible that we may be working with in the future for some of our clients. And if we do, again, we'll jump in to make sure that those connectors are published. We're talking 5 months worth of work to get from where we started to where we are now. So this is not something you just pick up and do quickly or without thought. But yeah, if there's one of our customers who wants to go to another chain, we would certainly take this on again. I know there are some other people in the community that have reached out to me that are looking at building a connector for other chains outside of these. And, we'd be happy to support that as well and help them to move along that process. So if you're thinking about it, reach out. I'm happy to help you and get you the resources you need. And, I'm sure Dennis as a maintainer and all the other maintainers are certainly willing to help as well to push this along like they did ours.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think that's always, the way the open source community works is somebody's willing to jump in and do something, the community will welcome it.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, I was at a company I couldn't contribute back to 25 years ago, but I wasn't allowed to contribute, and that somehow there's still some of my code in HTTPD. So,
sure.
that there's always a way to make that just happen.
Understood, Eddie. I'm just going to post in here. We have also the Start Here page for Hyperledger, and that's a great place if somebody's new to the community and just join the session here and wants to learn more about Hyperledger. You can go there and check it out. And I say we're at the top of the hour here. And gentlemen, any final comments? I really appreciate the session today. It was wonderful, and I'm really glad to see the growth of Tezos and FireFly. So Dennis, Eddie, any final comments for us today?
No, I don't think so. It was great to be here again, as always. We got another one coming up soon on our DID and VC stuff. So yeah, definitely it's great to be part of the community.
Yeah, and we appreciate all the hard work. Yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it was really fun. Yeah, and thank you for coming, and we'll be glad to help.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks for your time and for sharing.
Okay, everyone, well, have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining the session. We look forward to the next great session around what Tezos and FireFly are doing in the next session we have coming up.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.